You are so much more. MicDropClub.com. Make life boom.
Hi everybody, it's Doug Sam DJ for another episode of the Mic Drop Club. And today we have with us, blessing us with his presence, we've got the great Tim Cook, here to discuss and demyth and have a broader conversation in and around the subject of AI. It's going to be open and expansive conversation. You know, AI has been talked about quite a lot in the news of late. And I should imagine for the days, weeks, even years to come, it's going to be what we're going to be tending to talk about and discuss. So Tim is now, I can say, a good friend of mine. He focused on building AI confidence for leaders, charities, and schools, and so much more. So with no further ado, Tim, how you doing? And welcome to the Mic Drop Club.
I'm great, Douglas. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. We had such a great conversation the other week. I'm looking forward to repeating it for anyone else who feels like they want to listen.
Absolutely. I think if you see the chattering that's taking place, the noise, as it were, there's a signal in that noise, and that is AI. What's happening? How can I leverage it? Is it a threat? It's a polarizing subject depending on where we are in our careers, age, skill set, and whatnot. So, yeah, what's your take on the overall view on AI right now in terms of what's your gut instinct in terms of how people reconciling it?
Yeah, great question. I mean, on the one hand, AI is something that's been around for so long, right? It's been around for a long time. We all use AI in our day-to-day lives in some way, shape, or form. But obviously, kind of November 22 and everything that OpenAI did with ChatGPT has kind of given it this mass engagement around generative AI in particular. And that has just continued to build and build. And we've seen capabilities, really, really impressive AI capabilities, rolling out one after the other. And it's really hard to keep up with, even for those of us who are in the game. It is doubly, triply hard to keep up with for people who aren't paid to watch this happen on a day-to-day basis. And I think we really kind of see that playing out in a lot of the organizations that we work with. We see some of them who are those kind of really early adopters who are leaning into this, who have got one or two people who are really pushing at it. And then we also see within organizations people who are really quite worried about what this means for their jobs, what it means for society, what it means for democracy. And that's a pretty tough backdrop against which to do any tech adoption, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you cannot be neutral on a moving line in this conversation. It's fast paced, and choosing not to decide is not going to help you in your career. You know, it's one of those ones where I've spoken to many professionals. Some have tried to assume the ostrich position, head in the sand. When's it's going to go away? But I guess you're gonna have to have a position. Certainly, governments are being forced to have a position. Organizations, they've been forced to have a position on AI. My view is, I think we mirror that in the sense that it is super exciting. As a geek, this is like my Christmas. That it's constantly changing. There was a time where the advancements of technology was more linear, and you kind of like didn't need to be up to speed on a day-by-day basis with tech because it was so linear. You kind of like knew every 2-3 months there might be something new. But with AI the way it's going, literally daily, so there's always something there that piques my interest. On one side, you get used to, say, an app as your interface between AI. You're talking about generative AI here. Then another app comes in and supersedes it. We're talking about ChatGPT and DeepSeek. Literally turn the game on its head in terms of its reasoning capabilities. But then is what's truly exciting. It's moving, but I guess for a business that wants more stability and assurance, that is most certainly a challenging situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just the pace of new capabilities that are coming out is so hard for organizations to keep up with. And I often describe my role as the translator, if you like, between the pace at which all of this is moving and organizations who are just kind of struggling to keep up with that. And I think my challenge right now is the kind of capabilities are moving way quicker than I can bring the kind of organizations who we work with along with it. And I think actually, there's some things in here now that I'm starting to feel aren't actually helping in terms of the tech adoption, the AI adoption piece. I think the certainly the large frontier models, as we call them, so the open AIs and the Googles and Anthropics and so on of this world, they've released so many models and so many capabilities with so many different names that actually for an organization looking at that, it just looks almost impenetrable. And I can completely understand why, faced with that, you described the ostrich pose, right? I can completely understand why, when faced with that, organizations take that approach. But I think actually, firstly, there are AI capabilities that have been around for a long while that aren't generative, that do have that kind of decent level of assurance that you can get around them, and are pretty stable in terms of their capability. And certainly, when I was working in the government's office for AI a few years ago, this was the kind of technology that we were very much looking at and focusing on driving the adoption of across the economy. And there are some really good standards out now to support the adoption of these kinds of technologies. I think the challenge is how things like those standards keep pace with generative AI technologies, which, as you rightly say, at the moment are that kind of little bit more unstable. So I think, for those organizations that are feeling like they want to retrench and want to go into that ostrich mode, I think there are a couple of things. Firstly is, there are a range of very proven AI technologies out there at the moment, which are having benefit for a number of different organizations across the piece. But also just putting generative AI capability in the hands of your people, first of all, and giving them the opportunity to experiment in their world, and making sure that you kind of align that with some great sharing and kind of transparency around how we use the technology is going to be really powerful.
Yeah. You raised quite a few things there that are very important to play. I guess AI is one of those technologies that, when you, from an organizational perspective, normally a transformational piece of technology requires a permission to play from the top down. Mm-hmm. We're going to change the way you log into your systems. We're going to change your systems. We're going to want you to input data on this system, et cetera, et cetera. And so, the user doesn't have any leverage or a sense of control on any degree with that technology until it's adopted. AI is across the whole piece, because if an organization will struggle to, without the very clear guidance, to stop its users, its employees, from dabbling with AI in their home life, on the way to how they navigate themselves to work, how they even plan their own diaries at work. It's one of those ones where the whole permission to play thing needs wider understanding, because everything you said, the AI models are coming thick and fast, so fast that the average organization is struggling to pin down which variation, which combination should they be using in the first place, where some are cannibalizing each other, some are morphing. Sometimes you need to use more than one to get the desired result. So it's a very complex environment to operate in. And the way I look at it is, when you see a child and the child's explaining to you with excitement what has happened in that day, and they start saying, and then, so as a parent, you're struggling to figure out, okay, when is this and then going to stop? and we don't have that. It's always another then.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is actually, and I'm not advocating this as a parent, that we do this as parents, by the way, but one of the things to kind of move away from your metaphor a little bit is, rather than listening to the and then is actually to start with, go back to what is fundamental to your organization or your business or your charity or your school, which is, what are our priorities right now? What's really important to us? What's holding us back from achieving the things that we want to achieve? And then exploring whether we can use AI technologies and new capabilities that have come along to help us achieve those things that are really important to us. Because it is very easy to get blinded by all these different AI models and capabilities and everything else. And to a certain extent, we need to be aware of the capabilities that exist in order to help us dream big, right? But on the other hand, we also need to start with what's important to us. What's the mission that we're on? What's really important about what we're trying to do? What are the problems? What's getting in the way? And then exploring how we use AI to solve those problems. And I think that the thing still where businesses struggle, and this is, we run sessions with organizations around this where we understand their problems and then try and articulate the different types of AI approaches or methods that could be used to solve those problems. Because that's the really hard bit for organizations to get at, is, okay, now I can articulate my problems, but I don't know which of these myriad of capabilities that exist is the right approach to solve my problem. And what happens to my data? And does it sit within our enterprise environment, or does it go outside? Is it an open source model? Is it a closed source model? Do I need generative AI at all? Or is it a kind of AI capability of machine learning or deep learning or something else that's been around for quite some time that I actually need? Is it something that I can buy as a product off the shelf? Or is it something that we need to get a developer in to develop and build? And for me, of all the areas where I think people need most help, it's there. It's that kind of matching the problem that they have to the AI solution or approach that is the best fit for it.
I like that approach. Matching is so important. And you went back to talk about the define of the problem that AI can help your organization solve. And I guess I'm keen to find out from your perspective how you support businesses in this rapidly changing landscape to be able to clearly articulate the problem that they're seeking to solve, because that too could be shifting with advancements in technology. Is the organization from the top down singing from the same hymn sheet in terms of their core value proposition? And how do you go about helping them, reconcile that? Because I guess if you don't understand the problem, you then could put yourself into some serious financial challenges when you're not matching it with the right solution in terms of technology adoption to then, meet your core offering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's both a top-down and a bottom-up approach to this, Douglas. And what we always say is let's start just with a leadership team conversation, explore what is changing in the world of AI, explore what's changing in the world around our organization. So looking outside of our organization for a bit and exploring whether AI is changing the way that our customers or our clients or the communities that we engage with, if you to put this in the context of a charity or a public service, how is AI changing that world around us? And therefore, does that change our mission? And that's the first step. And therefore, does that change the priorities that we want to achieve? So we've got the kind of top-down approach to this. I then, alongside, you mentioned earlier AI policy, it's important that we put the kind of guardrails in for organizations, but that's kind of reasonably straightforward. Then is getting people within organizations to just start using generative AI. And let's be really clear in our language now, generative AI technologies, which can, and we see the benefits of generative AI technology first and foremost at the individual level, as it's happened across the economy. So individuals were the first people to benefit from generative AI, which speaks to what you were describing, which is something we call as like grey AI use, right? Using AI without the awareness of the leadership team or the permissions from IT or whatever. And we see this massive uptake in grey AI use. But if we capture that, and if we make that something that, in your words, is done with permission, right? If we give them permission to use, if we give our staff permission to use AI tools within certain boundaries, the use of generative AI tools can really help them solve millions of little problems. Whatever little problem you've got on that day, generative AI tool can help you solve it. And it really speeds up everybody's individual working if we give them the training and the kind of left and right of arc in terms of what they're allowed to do with the tools. And if we get that right, we get to a place where we've got both the kind of top down strategic, this is where we need to go in a world of AI, but you also then get the bottom up, oh, I'm using it for this. And actually, I've found that I consistently use generative AI tools for this particular piece of my workflow or whatever it might be. And one of the favorite questions I ask is, what would you love to train one of your colleagues to do? Because actually that's when we start to move from the getting the wins at an individual level to getting the wins at a team level or at an organization level. And we get the innovation happening bottom up and top down, and that for me is the kind of winning place to be. And then everybody can see where the capability is going and how it might solve some of the bigger problems that the organization has.
Excellent. I totally agree. It's certainly you have to tackle this from different vantage points, different positions. Definitely, absolutely, and the fact that from the individual, from the human side, they're reaping the benefits before the organization has even had time to grasp the benefits of it. The employee that's using AI is generative AI is finding tremendous value in being able to streamline their processes, get unstuck quicker, respond to their diary management quicker, become more leaner, more adaptable to changes in their work environment than those who are not doing it, and then the organization, as you said, needs to then think about, okay, what new capabilities can we then do? Which puts the excitingness, makes it become far more excitable for me when I look at digital transformation, because now we can enter a space where organizations can start to think about new markets, new products, new solutions to meet the needs of new types of customers. And you see that across local government. You see that in health, when people become more health conscious, health enabled, it straightway speaks to the health service and the care providers. Okay, what sort of skills do then you expect your nurses to have, your doctor to have, when the patient is coming with far more capabilities and understanding of their diagnosis, their condition, and what sort of therapeutic intervention they're required to live a prosperous life. So this is the space I really, really find exciting about AI. We're forced to think. Whereas the output we might think in is we're not doing any thinking. We're actually going to do a lot more thinking, but in the right areas.
And there's a fundamental piece of thinking that leaders and organizations as a whole need to do, which touches on your point there, which is that what we're seeing is such a kind of disparity where you have a few people in an organization using a technology to do stuff really quickly and to move their work forward at quite a pace, and others not taking that opportunity yet. We see quite a kind of disparity in organizations, and I've already had conversations with leaders around, how do we do performance reviews in a world where some people have this abundance and others don't? But I think there's also a massive question for leaders about what more they want to do. and that can be particularly in public service or in charities, for example. The idea, or even in the schools that we work with, the idea that of doing more might kind of be a tough one to sell for a leader to a team that's already really stretched, right? But these technologies allow us to do more, and what we've got to do is work out what we want to do more of with our time. Are we going to try and do more of the thing that we have already done, always been doing? So if we are somebody who is writing bids for funding, does this mean we now do 20 bids instead of 2 bids in the same time, or whatever that might be? But also, instead, we could do more quality. So that more quality could be, we could still try and do 2 bids or try and do 2 things, but now we can use the AI tool to review and to look at the bids from different personas and perspectives, and actually get us an output that is better than what we were able to do just working alone, now that we can work kind of co-intelligently with AI tools. The third is, like, can we just do more of something different now? Can we do it? Does this technology allow us to, we're going to save time here, so we can spend more of our time either doing something much more kind of human, draws on our human qualities, whether that's kind of engaging with people, having the right different conversations, but that more could also be, or rather that's something else, could be going and, having time off, or it could be going and doing more professional development. And I've also worked with companies where they've said, if you want a 4-day week, we can bring some AI tools into the organization, and we can achieve the similar amount of output in 4 days instead of 5, and everybody still gets paid the same. The other one, which you just touched on, is the ability to reach more people. So these technologies can just help us to serve more people, serve them 24/7 instead of 9 to 5, all sorts of potential to reach different audiences. But as a leadership team, you've got to be really clear what we want more of, because if your message to your staff is we're going to achieve the same as we did before, then the obvious thing from that is redundancies. Because if you're saying to your staff, we're only going to try and achieve the same as we were last week and last year, then you're going to need less resource to do that with AI. And I think the visionary leadership is the leader who goes, this is how we want to use AI to achieve more as an organization. And with the resources that we have, we can actually now achieve this much instead of this much.
Wow. It certainly lends itself for big thinking. You are so much more than what you can imagine you are, and AI gives us that platform to reimagine things. So I just wanted to see if we can take this from a geopolitical landscape, because I guess nothing exists in isolation. This sits within a framework, a wider, broader piece. What do you think the geopolitical landscape is? We've seen some tectonic shifts in government's approach to AI. Could you just talk us through some of these significant developments and what it means for us?
Yeah, so I mean, the most eye-watering thing is the £500 billion investment that is being made over in the US. Most of that is private sector investment, but most of it is also very much focused at some of the infrastructure that AI needs, whether that's data center, whether it's chips or compute or whatever that might be. So real kind of doubling down on some of the infrastructure that is needed over in the US. Challenged very interestingly by DeepSeek and this Chinese model that has apparently been created with orders of magnitude less cost and people than some of the models that are in the US. Now, I think that story still has quite a bit to run, and I'm kind of nervous about nailing my colours to the mast just yet on the DeepSeek story. But meanwhile, the UK government announced its AI Opportunities Action Plan a couple of weeks ago. And in my view, they set out what is a really quite ambitious plan and a very public services focused plan as well, which I think is much needed and is one thing that may just help some of the challenges that the public services are finding nowadays, which you don't need me to tell you, Douglas, how stretched some of them are. But I think the ambition with the UK plan is absolutely right. I think the challenge there is going to be taking people on the journey with us, and for all of the reasons that we've talked about through this podcast, a little bit of a sense from the plan, albeit it is quite thin and there's more detail to come. A little bit of a sense of we can just wave an AI magic wand over everything and it'll all be all right. I think the depth of thinking that is needed is going to be a lot more, and taking people on that journey with us, and particularly when it comes to the use of their data and everything else. Meanwhile, the EU, just this week, the EU's AI Act, a number of the provisions in that act came into force this week. So really important if you do business in the EU. There are provisions around AI literacy, for example, that you have to adhere to, and various other provisions that came into force this week under the EU's AI Act. And I think what we have is kind of two very different approaches to AI regulation. The EU have gone all in on their AI Act. It's very a lot of what we call horizontal AI regulation, so regulating for the technology, not just where it's used. The US, one of the things that Trump did after coming in was repeal one of Biden's executive orders on AI safety. So a real kind of walking backwards on AI regulation in the US, which I think leaves an interesting space for the UK to be the place to come and do responsible AI adoption, where we put more focus on safe AI safety and responsible AI use than we're seeing in the US, but that we do in a less regulatory kind of involved way as the EU. I think potentially makes the UK quite an attractive place to come and do AI. And I think that window has just got a little bit wider with Trump coming in, and with the kind of EU AI Act hitting the road right now. There is, of course, a very different regulatory approach again in China, and we have kind of 4 regulatory experiments going on, if you like, in the world, in kind of China, in the EU, in the UK, and the US, and it will be interesting to see how they play out.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. These 4 different centers for regulation is where the AI race is going to be won or lost. That's my gut instinct. I sincerely believe we're in that Sputnik moment. Who's going to be first one, to cross the cosmos? Who's the first one to do it? Certainly, if you take a look at China, a communist country, and the fact that, as you rightfully said, they got DeepSeek out at a minutia of the published costs. We're talking about eye-watering amounts here when we're talking about the US equivalent, what they're looking to invest, talking about billions. 500 billion is what the US wants to invest into the AI. So it's not cheap, but they're doing it at a fraction of the cost in an environment that's communist run. Then you got Europe that has not produced any tech billionaires at all, heavily regulated. And I totally second what you're saying in terms of the UK. I think its saving grace for Brexit is tariffs might not hit the UK. And we're in a position to leverage our expertise in the technology space to be the college in between the two bones, between those competing regulatory mechanisms, and make it work, and just actually have a common sense and make it work. If we have ambition, I think it speaks to leadership. All too often in digital transformation, there's some leaders that can only lead a horizontal change in working. AI is one of those technological breakthroughs, right? That it requires a different skill set, a different type of leader. I've yet to see it in governments in Europe. I've not yet seen it in large part in our current setup, that where I believe the wrong actors are at play in leadership when it comes to AI. I don't see the visionary people at play yet. They could be coming with training, but I'm certainly to unpack the capabilities. I guess you got to be able to reconcile being risk adverse. What technology have you rolled out in the past? What lessons have been learned in there? Because our biggest example is technology pre-pandemic, across the board. What were the blockers? What were the hurdles? It was regulatory, particularly in the health space. I can talk to that all day long. We would never have had video consultations, even though the technology has been there for decades. We've tried to get it over the line, but we always fell short to IG, governments, regulation. A global pandemic comes, we change a whole mindset, and now we can have video consultation. Now it's becoming the norm. Video conversation, allowing people to have choice. So I'm just saying that as a backdrop that, yes, I'm totally with you 100%. The right leadership, the UK most definitely are uniquely positioned to maximize and fully benefit from this AI expansion and transformation, if those key factors are all present.
Can I just pick up on something you said right at the start there, Douglas, where you kind of rightly hypothesized that there'll be a winner somewhere in those four regulatory approaches, probably, right? But it's interesting perhaps to dig a little bit deeper on what we mean by a winner, okay? Because do we mean a winner in terms of reaching AGI? Well, everybody's going to define AGI how they want to define it so they can claim they've reached it, right? For me, being a winner is about using the technology in ways that benefit society and benefit the people of who live within the kind of sphere of that regulatory regime, right? It's no good being a winner. It's no good getting to AGI if that kind of just completely disrupts society and leaves a vast swathe of people way worse off than they were before. So I think we even need to work out how we define winning in an AI world. And I very much subscribe to the view that regulation can help innovation if you do it right. If you regulate properly, we can't have cars that go fast on the road without the regulation around safety and MOTs and brakes and tires and everything else, right? That is what allows us to have cars that go fast. And we've got to sometimes just kind of think regulation isn't the enemy of innovation. If we get regulation right, we can actually get innovation right and make sure that innovation is safe for everyone.
Yes, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. Just to continue on where we're coming from, there's another avenue that we need to maybe just touch very, very quickly, and that's about loyalty, consumer loyalty, and how it affects our attention span. In the run up to Trump's inauguration, the big issue in the US was TikTok's ban, right? It was the biggest issue. People up in arms, they're going to ban TikTok. The administration found value in it because it helped Donald Trump be elected. The youth found it a useful tool. So any tool is useful if you know how to use it. And they recognized the tool of social media, TikTok in particular, for aiding that. On a wider situation, the human being attention span is shrinking into probably 1 or 2 seconds. And that comes from the way we scroll across social media, the way we want instant answers, just-in-time knowledge. AI, generative AI can talk to that sort of situation. So when we look at then, say, the winner out of this situation, where there's no loyalty, we've seen the US as an example, a lot of their influencers switching to Red Note and other Chinese social media platforms when they thought TikTok was going to be banned. So that kind of like gets into the psychological profile of the consumer that we need to consider. How the regulatory bodies across these tectonic plates doesn't correspond necessarily to the user base. If users find a tool that they consider useful, they could switch allegiance to any of these areas that add value to their life. They use it as a tool that they consider useful. I think that is a unique situation to be in, where that loyalty base is, because again, the investment is so minimal. It's not like you're buying, say, trainers. You only buy, say, Nike or Adidas, or you only drive a BMW. There's a physical thing, but AI is literally just a tool to enable you to do something. So it just speaks to our own deepest desires for our wants to be fulfilled. That thing that also speaks to these opportunities that we have.
Absolutely.
And hopefully good actors.
And I think one of the reasons why generative AI is so disruptive is it can solve millions of whatever little problem you've got that day, it can probably help you along the way with in some way, shape or form. Like today, I solved the fact that my emails were getting blocked by someone because the DNS SPF, I don't even know what they stood for, didn't work. But I just got ChatGPT to help me through it, and we solved it in half an hour with a bit of coaching from ChatGPT to get me through that problem. Would have taken me half a day probably previously. No one's designing when OpenAI designed ChatGPT, they didn't design it to solve that problem for me. And this is kind of both the beauty and the challenge with these tools is they are there able to solve millions of little problems, which makes it really hard to sell to someone, use this tool because it will do X for you, when actually their X is very different to your X, right? And that then comes back to your point around kind of attention and how much people kind of stay connected to these. And I think some of the kind of open AIs of and Googles and others of this world have got to kind of balance that off and remember that for most people, being given the option of 4040 mini or 4040 mini, 3030 mini, canvas, yada yada yada, to choose from before they even start typing in an AI tool. For self-confessed geeks like yourself, Douglas, might be brilliant, but for many people that is so off-putting. And we've got to kind of remember that that attention span that you talked about will get lost if we don't make these tools that easy and we find the balance.
Yeah. And that's being played out right now. As we've got a common user interface experience that's not the best between, say, DeepSeek, ChatGPT. It's kind of common, but we're at the stage we're still waiting for that Google single input moment where it's so simple, it just makes sense. It takes away all the complexities out. That's not there yet. But then these are things all open for play. I wanted to also talk about some of the challenges. I think we're doing it in around the conversation, in adopting, and actually, how can we win? What would be your approach to win somebody that's sitting on the fence when it comes to using AI? That says, I'm a purist. I want to do the research myself.
So the first thing is to understand what it is that is their barrier, right? And I think this is something that is overlooked in all of this, is within every organization, a whole range of views exist about using AI for what they're doing. About AI generally. You have the people who are racing ahead, who think the organization is not moving quick enough. You have the people who are really scared about what this means for their job, what it means for creativity, what it means for society. And we've got to make sure we listen to all those voices first. And that's kind of a first thing. And that's the kind of thing that any leader can do for free, by the way. Like, you don't need to pay someone like me to come and tell you that. You can just sound people out for free and understand what the kind of emotion is within your organization. It feels like cheating is something that I hear quite often. I hear people say, I'm not really sure I want to do that. It feels a bit like cheating. To which I said, well, it depends on who really cares about whether you are cheating or not. There are some situations where people might absolutely care whether you're cheating or not. But other situations, if you're able to use these tools in a way that put you yourself as the human at the center of the way that you're using them, and things still come across with your voice, and it's your creativity and it's your thought that's gone into it in the first place, then that kind of sense of cheating can go away. And quite often, one of the things we do is we show people how, rather than delegating a task to the AI, saying, write this report for me, go away and do that for me, which, by the way, most of the time, generative AI tools really struggle with unless you write a really long prompt. We show them actually to work alongside the AI tool to get it to help them structure, okay, let's go through a first step. Let's think about how we might structure it. No, I think I'd like to structure it in this way. Okay, let's go for 10 ideas for how we might go into this, and giving them the power to choose. Oh no, these are the ideas that I want to explore in this, rather than those being the ideas. And using it to kind of work alongside you, and then using it again at the end to critique and challenge and help you see the problem from different viewpoints. Or indeed sometimes to do all the human thinking first. And we have started using AI tools in workshops to kind of expand creativity, but we found that if you introduce the AI too early, it kind of constrained the human thinking a bit. So we encourage people to exhaust their human thought first, and then bring the AI tool in, and see if we can expand on and grow out our thinking a little bit. So a lot of it then comes down to how we use them, and deliberately using them in ways that allow us to still be creative, to still bring our energy, how we shape things at work, to the fore. If we choose to use AI tools in a way where we go and do that for me, and go and do that for me, and go and do that for me, then we will quickly lose that kind of human autonomy. And also, that is the quickest route to losing your job as well.
No, absolutely. So what is your take then on, I guess as an industry that is ripe for disruption, you cannot have this conversation without talking about education, from higher education all the way down to elementary, infantile education. How are academics or educators going to be able to measure intelligence or measure performance when you have AI? This is so far beyond the GCSE moment. We're showing that age now when the calculator will allow you to use calculators in class or in examinations. This is to the next level. So, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, it's fascinating. We do a lot of work with schools and school leaders. It's part of my business, AI Confident, is a social enterprise, and we reinvest some of what we make into supporting school leaders because we think this is deeply, deeply important. And they're faced with a range of things, right? They're faced with how they use AI tools themselves to get better, and help their staff use AI tools themselves. They're faced also with the impacts of AI on young people more broadly. But right in the middle of all of that, you've touched on the kind of challenge of assessment, and what assessment and assessing knowledge in particular looks like in an AI-enabled world. And the reality is that AI tools are going to be able to, and are able to, game a number of the assessment processes that we have in place at the moment. And there is a real risk that we try to cling on to those assessment processes and try to ban AI from them completely. And there are very limited ways that you can do that. The only real way you can do that is have somebody in a room where you know where they are and assess them in that space, which might be legitimate in that particular, does happen for exams, of course. But anything that is kind of coursework based, where we need to assess knowledge, we're going to need to assess that knowledge in a completely different way and get a real deep grasp for people's understanding of the subject, because they could quite easily bring AI to the table. And we run the risk, of course, of then getting into some world where we start using AI detectors and people are building AI tools to detect whether people have used AI, around which there's a body of evidence that suggests that they are, for a number of reasons, in many cases, or can be not that effective. But even if they were, you then get people building AI tools to defeat the detectors that you can put your homework through before you use the detector. And we end up in this kind of arms race, right, which is a massive waste of resources and energy of everybody involved, when we could instead have been asking the question, how do we assess people differently in this AI age? And I think we've got to think about all the different layers of things that we've talked about, right? One of them is, your point about attention spans, and are we giving the deep thought to things? We're going to need to actively create spaces for deep thought. We're going to need to actively create struggle, because these tools can so easily remove struggle, remove friction, remove the kind of space for deep thought, which is exactly where the learning happens, right? We learn in that space.
Yeah.
We learn when we have to work hard at something. We learn when we have to think deeply about it. And we some real deep thought about how we use these tools in the right way in education, but also make clear when it's not the right time to use them. And that needs to come not just from educators, but also from young people and from parents as well, in understanding that whole conversation around, is it right for me to use AI? Actually, do I need to go through the struggle right now to make sure that I learn this? Because I'm not going to be sat alongside an AI when I'm being assessed in my, in the exam hall in my GCSEs or A levels or whatever. So it's a real knotty challenge. I think my kind of challenge is review the assessment. What is it you're assessing for, and can it be gamed?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It just blew my mind as you're talking about this subject. It's far bigger than what the resources that we're throwing at it, I believe. The teacher that says to the class, if you've got any questions, don't be scared. Put up your hand. Raise your hand if you've got a question. All questions are valid, all questions are equal, and all that kind of stuff. I think that needs to be debunked with AI. As to your point about how we measure performance, thinking, deep thinking, the quality of our thoughts, no two questions are equal. So maybe it's a question of being able to measure the quality of the question. That is the interesting side of things. What questions are you asking that lead to answers that are of value within your specific field of expertise?
I love that.
Because that's what you'd be doing when you're prompting, literally, right? You'd be setting up your prompt based around question set. And I see this shaping up in terms of new subjects as well that need to be expanded, like the meta skills, the skills that what AI cannot do. So there's a human component to everything. And there's an argument to be said that we have dehumanized the human through the way that we've structured our education already anyway. And there's a reining back that could occur if we focus on meta skills. Like, how can we measure your ability to be a critical thinker yourself? How can you be an inspirational person, being able to think about something and build it? The quality of our aspiration, the quality of our dreams can also be something that we can be now thinking about. Oh, maybe this is something, ethical reasoning, and it goes from the menial to the real deep society issues, like when it comes to ethical reasoning. is it okay that, say, for example, if I'm washing my hands in a public toilet at an airport and it doesn't dispense the soap because it doesn't recognize the melanin concentration in my hands, at some point, somebody omitted key information about people that were going to be using these things. So I see it being a very exciting situation, and re-educating educators in around them coming to terms with, we got just-in-time knowledge. I think we touched upon this last time we spoke, whereas at the moment we have a situation where you got cumulative knowledge and you have to dispense it in a controlled environment at a set time of the year, which doesn't really talk to the individualization of the human being, does it? It's just like, okay, you guys are year 1, year 2, whatever year you're in bulk, you shall be real-time knowledge. And I think the way society is moving so fast, questions need to be asked about how valuable is that moving forward when our attention span and we want things now, we want the answers now. And to your point of like some society issues we need to think about on a deeper level and show that we've actually reflected on things before we can actually move forward. So I see this as somewhere exciting. We just take a look at that, and whoever cracks that, oh my God, yeah.
although one thing that that you touched on a little bit there is while this feels like a lot of change for educators, right? As I said, they've got change within the school and change outside the school as a result of AI. There are actually some things that are even more important that they are already doing, and that is those skills that you talked about there around creative thinking, around metacognition, around problem solving. The ability to solve a problem once you can articulate it has gone through the roof with these technologies. But actually having that ambition to go, I want to go and solve this problem, if we can give young people that, they're going to be so well equipped for an AI-enabled world where they have now at their fingertips the tools to solve those problems in a way that they have never had before. I think the other one that I do kind of find shocks teachers a little bit is around team building and team working skills, because yes, we're going to need all of those skills to do the great human stuff working alongside other humans, but most of the children in education now, there's a reasonable chance when they reach leadership roles that they'll be leading teams of AIs and humans. And that's quite kind of eye-opening when you think about it like that. And actually their kind of team working and team building and communication skills that are going to be needed in that world is phenomenal. And are all good stuff that educators are already doing with young people.
Yeah, that is a mic drop for you, Tim. I forgot to give you one. That's definitely a mic drop for you because, wow. Yeah, that is food for thought, really. And it speaks to some of the challenges that we've had that we've not reconciled in regards to inequalities. And when the whole human can be replaced with an AI agent, so it's important for us to be in the moment, reconcile we're in the moment, whilst we're in the moment, and do some things, put some things in place to create that environment where the network can be a combination of the human and the non-human. Team building, as you said, is something that is so important. We see our social influences in terms of how many followers do you have? These are little men. These are networks. This could be something that's deemed a skill if you can get enough people together in around a subject, a theme, as it were. But wow, it is massive. So in terms of organizations and individuals, is there any thoughts around? And for me, the enemy, as it were, like what are we up against that's blocking all of this? What can be done?
I think the kind of, you asked about the enemy. I mean, maybe this is multifaceted. I'm going to go with a few M's, I think. The first of them is misuse, right? The enemy is us as humans deciding to use AI tools in ways that coming to your point about equality, that kind of drive a wedge through equality and exacerbate existing inequalities that we have. So misuse, and that's a very human thing, right? Let's not make this about the technology. Let's not kind of make this feel like it's something that's being done to us. We still have control over how these technologies are used. And so misuse is one of them. Misunderstanding, I think, is another, particularly, everything I was saying earlier about the kind of terminology around artificial intelligence is kind of so confused to the point where I'm almost thinking, do we stop using AI at all to describe and actually give each different technology that we're talking about its correct and individual name, and kind of try and cut through some of that misunderstanding. And then the third is that kind of misdirection. So, all of the power being and all of the benefit from these technologies landing in the hands of a few. And I think, there are a few things that have happened globally over the last kind of few weeks in particular that make me feel like we're not heading in a positive direction on that one, unfortunately. And which is why, particularly, within the things that are within our control, here in the UK in particular, making sure that when we talk about the use of these technologies in public services, that we are doing so with the end user at heart, with the citizen, with the general public, their benefit and their well-being at the heart of what we do. Because if we get that wrong, we'll turn a lot of people off from the technology. You asked me the kind of role of organizations and individuals. I mentioned earlier there's something you can do for free. There's actually two things you can definitely do for free, which I do with a lot of organizations who I work with, but I always say to them, you can do this for free. You don't need me to come and do this for you. One of them is ask your team how they're using AI, right? I find out from everybody across your team how they're using AI at the moment, because I guarantee you'll find stuff that surprises you. And when they share with one another, that is the quickest path to innovation, is that sharing with one another. And the second is the thing I was talking about earlier, which is ask how people are feeling about the technology. Get to the nub of some of those concerns that people might have. Both of those are things. And I hear a lot of leaders say to me, but I don't know. I feel uncomfortable starting the conversation because I don't know enough about it. Whereas actually for me, I think great leadership comes from being able to go into a conversation without knowing everything about it, and actually feeling like you don't have to be the person in the room who knows everything, but who solicits from everybody else that information to the benefit of everybody else. And so leading those kind of bold and brave conversations from a place where you don't know everything, because believe you me, I don't know everything. And anybody who tells you they know everything in the world of AI, I can guarantee you is lying to you. Nobody knows everything in this world. It is moving so quickly at the moment. It is all about having some bold and brave conversations.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Bold and brave. And now we actually get into the essence of digital transformation. This is what we're supposed to be doing when we transform services, having those difficult, challenging conversations. We know for hearts and minds, but create an environment where people feel safe and secure to express how they're feeling. We're coming to realization most of the stuff that is called digital transformation has been change management. Now we should actually get down to what we were supposed to be doing. My enemy in this whole thing, and I've listened intently to what you were saying, and I was ticking, so I agree a lot with what you're saying. Misuse, misunderstanding, inequality, the digital divide, those who have and those who do not have, that should be perceived as an enemy. Considering that we're framing the AI race, is the Gatling gun has gone off for the AI race. So those who are not even at the race, they're not even going to be in the economics, new economic models for the future. So that's something that worries me. I'll go back to the Gutenberg's press, maybe 500-600 years ago. Prior to that, reading the concentrated knowledge was only in the hands of, say, monks, the religious bodies. That changed things. But it took time. But we want an exponential growth. I think we're doing this now because of the advancements of knowledge, written down knowledge. There's something about having a democratized way of rolling out AI, because it can show your prompt, but doesn't show your working. It doesn't show how it works it out in the back end, because that's the secret sauce. That's the secret sauce. You don't have a secret sauce when it comes to a book, a paper-based book that you buy. There's no secret sauce. You know, somebody's researched, they produce something of interest, and you read it. So my enemy is that unknown component of the AI. You know, it's like the code, the underlying code, the inability to surface the underlying code for the benefit of humanity. Because even if you were to find a cure for a rare disease with the AI, you don't have to share the actual code that built it. You just show this is how it works. This is the solution for your boots. So that to me is that unknown component to me is the enemy.
I would challenge on that a little. So there are a couple of spaces and a couple of examples where, I mean, there are of course open source generative AI models, right? Of which there are varying ranges of actual open sourceness. Okay, but truly open source models do allow you to see into the weightings and the data sets and everything else that support that. Although I think a lot of people, even those who are much closer to them than I am, still struggle to understand how it's coming up with the actual answers that it is coming up with much of the time. There are the kind of odd example of the kind of sharing of this for the greater good. So if you look at what DeepMind did with AlphaFold, the protein folding, the AI that's solving protein folding. Now, this is an example at the other end of the spectrum from generative AI, where generative AI is solving millions of little problems for people. This is at the kind of solving one problem, but one really huge, impactful problem. And not obviously generative AI technology, but the ability to fold a protein and understand how proteins are folded, rather, has all sorts of potential breakthroughs for medical science. And they pretty much open booked the approach there, because they saw the benefit that was going to be felt would be taken up much wider. But I think you're right. Those examples are kind of few and far between, and in many cases, the vast majority of cases, we are working with black boxes in some way, shape, or form, which is tough.
The black box is the enemy.
There you go.
That's it. When every plane crashes, you need the black box to find out why it happened. So yeah, it's the black box. It's the unknown. Basically, it's the unknown component of all of this is the enemy. So any final calls to action, for any organization or any individual, what can they start doing today to prepare themselves for AI?
So if you're an individual, just go and experiment. Understand what you can and can't put into it in terms of data and data sensitivity and everything else. Just go and try it. And the kind of way that we always start our training when we do training with organizations is bring your to-do list and solve a problem that you actually have today. Just bring your to-do list along and see if you can break it with AI technology. And I guarantee you'll make headway on it. Don't try and kind of sit in front of an AI tool going, I don't know what I'm going to do with it now. Just pick a generative AI of your choice, take your to-do list and see how far you can get through it in half an hour. Great way to start using these technologies. From a leader's perspective, I would definitely go to those 2-3 things. Do those 2-3 things before anything else. Understand how your people are using the tools. Understand how they feel about them.
There's nothing like a bit of constriction in time to prompt people to act. I like that a lot. So how can people get access to you, Tim? You know, how can they find out more and the great value that you offer? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so my business is called AI Confident. We exist to help leaders get confident in AI. We kind of combine about a decade plus of AI knowledge from myself working in government on AI with coaching and leadership change management, because as you rightly identified, this is all about kind of change management ultimately. And we support leaders both in education, in the not-for-profit sector, and in for-profit businesses, particularly those who have a purpose, right? Businesses who have a purpose and who are wanting to work out how we use these technologies to kind of in ways that align with our values and our ethics. We're at www.aiconfident.co.uk. Hit us up on the website. It's having a refresh very soon. So if it doesn't look that great at the moment on the website, just hit the form and get in touch with us through the form, and we'll tell you all about us.
Oh, brilliant stuff. And yeah, Tim, thank you very much for your first visit to the Mic Drop Club. A round of applause for Tim. Thank you very much. I know my audience have been waiting for conversations such as this. You make AI so accessible. Having frank conversations. It's been a rather expansive conversation. We've gone from the geopolitical, we've gone from organizations to education. We've gone around the houses on this conversation, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. So I'll be able to reach out to you, and hopefully you can come back and we can continue the conversation as some sort of series, because I can see a lot of value in that, to take people on that journey and walk the walk with them. Walk the walk with them. So one more time, thank you, Tim, for joining us today.
I would love to do that. Thank you for your passion, Douglas. I've loved the energy that you brought to this as well, and your own kind of interest and expertise in it is great. And I love the fact that you said the first time, which means hopefully there'll be more.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to check out micdropclub.com and get the show notes and useful links. Subscribe to the podcast. Don't just live life, make life boom.